Hi everyone, David Aragona and Craig Milkowski are taking a look at the feature race at Gulfstream Park on Saturday. Race 11 is the Gulfstream Park Sprint, going 6 furlongs on the main track, and we've got 10 runners signed on for this race, Craig, and it's not the easiest race to handicap because I think you can't have too much confidence in the trips that any of these horses are going to pull because there is a lot of speed in this race, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit when we get to the pace projector. But throwing up the field for this race, I guess the horse to beat is that morning line favorite, the number 6 Candyman Rocket. And I think one reason that he becomes especially dangerous in this race is he is one of the few horses in this field that has shown that he's okay to pass horses.
Yeah, there is a lot of speed in here. We're going to talk about the pace projector in a minute, but I would be surprised if this one doesn't end up in a fast pace.
Yeah, and Candyman Rocket has shown the ability to come from just off the pace, though I don't think he wants to be rallying from too far back, so we'll see where he finds himself in the early stages of this race. And to get a clue as to that, let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this 10-horse field, and you see the number 6, Candyman Rocket, right there in the middle of the pack in 5th place. That does seem about right to me looking at the form, and I think he could be okay with that kind of trip, but you do see those 3 horses across the track up front, and they feel like 3 of the ones that could be on the lead of this race, though the number 9 Hurricane J feels like another that needs to be up close to have his best chance. And Craig, the number 10 Dean Delivers is shown on the lead. At least he has the luxury of being drawn outside of all of those other pace rivals, so maybe he takes back into a stalking position. But the number 5 Swervin, the number 8 Toto Fino, they feel like need the lead types.
Yeah, definitely feel like need the lead types to me. Dean Delivers has shown the ability to come from somewhat off the pace in the past, though he went pretty fast last time. I mean, he can get headstrong. So like I said, I'd be surprised if a fast pace doesn't develop. I do think he is the best of the speeds.
If things really fall apart, you do want to note that the number 4 Ironstone has the LP flag on the pace projector, indicating that he has the highest Timeform US late pace rating in the field, though this is Gulfstream Park and not always the most favorable to deep closers like that. Well, let's go through this field, mostly in post position order, beginning with the number 1 Run Classic. And this horse is sort of an enigma in this race because he's coming off a layoff since last May, going out for a new barn for the first time in Jose D'Angelo, where he was formerly with Brett Calhoun. And this is a horse that definitely has quality from a pure ability standpoint. You could make the argument that he's one of the most talented horses in this race, but is this just a starting point off the layoff? Because 6 furlongs feels like it could be a little short for him. Don't you think, Craig?
It feels a little short to me. And also when we looked at that pace projector, I couldn't help but notice he has shown way back. He's not quite last, but he's way back in the field. And he's a horse that likes to run up front or at least close to it. And most of those races have come at longer distances.
Yeah, he was successful sprinting early in his career, but he ran most of his faster speed figures going a bit further, 7 furlongs out to 1 mile and a 16th. So this feels like it could just be a starting point, and especially breaking from the inside, not exactly where you want to be if you get outrun early and have to deal with all that kickback as a horse that's not really used to that. So some potential issues that Run Classic has to overcome in this race. The number 2 is Loco Abarrio. Let's take a look at his race 2 back when he was last running on the dirt. This was an optional claiming race, and by far the best effort of his career top 119 Timeform US speed figure. That effort certainly makes him competitive with this field, and he beat a good horse in the process in Super Chow, who is drifting out through the stretch, but does finish in the photo for second, and Super Chow did come back out of this race to win a grade 3 event at Aqueduct next time, though regressing a little bit from a speed figure standpoint. If this version of Loco Abarrio shows up, he's got a chance in this race. It's just hard to trust that he's going to get back to that performance.
Yeah, I was a little surprised to see the 15-1 morning line when we first started this video, because when I handicapped it, there was no morning line. And seeing this horse beat a good horse like Super Chow, I would take 15-1 on him in a second. I'm not saying he's my top pick in a race like this, but I don't think he'll be that high. But that effort was good last time. It's just, what do you do with that synthetic race last time?
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously just not a synthetic horse. What do you do with his form prior to that 119? I mean, he's just not a horse that really was running numbers to make him competitive here or even competing at this class level. When you look at his series of Timeform US race ratings going down the condition ovals in his PPs. So just not really sure what to do with Loco Abarrio, though if he is a big price, maybe he's one you want to throw in somewhere. The number 3 is Long Range Toddy, who is, I can't believe he's only 8 years old, Craig, because it feels like this horse has been around forever. Now he's is in a new barn going out for Victor Barboza, and he's run pretty well since the trainer switch, reeled off a couple of victories in a row, and that's a big deal for long-range Toddy because he's a horse who hadn't won a race in quite some time before that July victory at Gulfstream Park last year. Came off a bit of a layoff last time in the Mr. Prospector, and he tried really hard against a good horse in Sibelius and was chasing that rival every step of the way before tiring at the end. It seems like he's in some of the best form of his career right now. We'll see if he can work out a trip.
It's kind of funny. It was when I went to do this race, seeing him in here because I'm going back to Oaklawn Park this weekend for the first time, I believe, since Long Range Toddy won a division of the Rebel, and that had been his last win before his switch in the barns. He's come back in great form, and I think that last race was probably better than it looks. You can see it in the time form US speed figure. He was pressing a pretty quick pace by Sibelius, who's a very good horse, would most likely be favored if he was in this spot. I believe he's headed overseas, and he ran good that day. So if he improves second off the layoff, I could see him being a contender.
Now, as we were saying with regard to the pace projector, if the pace really just melts down, it's going to suit a horse like the number 4 Ironstone, who we're looking at next. And this horse, Craig, has started on the dirt once before, and that was going 1 mile and 3/16 in the Prince of Wales Stakes at Fort Erie as part of that Canadian Triple Crown. Was I think 7 starts ago in his past performances. It was a muddy seal track. I don't think he's likely to get that kind of going on Saturday at Gulfstream Park, so still remains to be seen if he can handle a fast track. But he did run as well as he has on the synthetic, on the dirt, that one time that he tried it. And since then, he's turned back to sprint distances with some success. It just seems like this horse is still a bit of a wild card in this race because you don't know how he's going to handle these conditions, especially with the kind of kickback that you usually experience at Gulfstream Park.
I think Wildcard says it well, and I would even go so far as the guy who made the speed figure for the Fort Erie race that was a bit of a wild card too, because that race always draws mostly horses from Woodbine. They've all been running on turf and synthetic. There's just not a lot of dirt for them to go on, and when they return, they don't run on dirt again. So I'm just saying, kind of take that figure with a grain of salt, but he ran well. There's no denying that, and if he could get a setup, I could see him getting into the trifecta.
The number 5 is Swervin, and he is one of the fastest horses in the early stages of this race. He's almost always vying for the early lead, and he was contesting a very fast-paced 2-back in that stakes at Charlestown, along with the classy Damon's Mound, and got put away by that foe mid-race. But 7 furlongs, around 2 turns, probably too far for this horse. The 3 times that he's gone shorter than 7 furlongs, he's won all those races, though some of them against weaker competition. Does feel like this horse is going to be involved in the pace, Craig, and he's pretty game when you watch his replay. He always tries hard. I just wonder if he's quite this quality.
Yeah, that's a real question with him because, I mean, it seems like every time I watch Gulfstream, Safi Joseph is winning a race or two every day. And this horse is coming back off a short layoff. He's a horse who he's a newly turned 4-year-old. This will be his first race. So if he improves, I mean, I could see him in the picture here.
The number 6 is that morning line favorite, Candyman Rocket, and we'll take a look at the last time that he was victorious back in the middle of May 2023 when he won the Grade 3 Run Happy at Belmont Park, and got a good trip this day, sitting in that stalking position behind a couple of leaders, took over in mid-stretch and goes on to win this race, going the same distance, 6 furlongs that he'll encounter today. And if he can get the same kind of trip in this spot, I think Bill Mott and the Connections would be very happy. This horse has been successful at Gulfstream Park in the past. He's actually 4 for 4 over this surface, including a victory in the Gulfstream Park Sprint last year.
Yeah, he's a horse. The layoff is a bit of a question, but he's certainly one of the better horses on overall quality in this field. I tried to look up some formulator stats on Bill Mott. There wasn't really anything there overwhelmingly positive or negative. This is a horse who has done fine off of a layoff before at Gulfstream Park, so I don't think the layoff is too big of a concern.
Yeah, I agree. This horse has come off long layoffs twice before at Gulfstream Park in both 2022 and 2023, and he won both of those races. It was some of the best performances of his career from a speed figure standpoint. So maybe this is a horse that we just don't have to be worried about the layoff too much. The number 7 is Scaramouche, and I think current form is just the major question with this horse, Greg, because he was running pretty well through the middle of last year, early on, especially when he was the winner of that Gallant Bob in 2022, earning that Grade 2 victory. But since then, it's just been up and down, and lately just mostly down as he's just disappointed in a series of races, trying to get back on track here for Guadalupe Preciado. But his prior Gulfstream Park efforts don't make you really convinced that this is his preferred surface.
No, you would be taking a leap of faith if you think this course could run back to his Gallant Bob, which I think is actually his last victory. He hasn't even really been competitive as late. His speed figures don't really stack up, so he's not for me.
The number 8 is Todofino, who is another one that's going to be gunning for the early lead. He's a horse that really does seem like he needs to be in front to have his best chance. And we'll take a look at his last victory, which actually came going the 6 furlong distance at Gulfstream Park back in October of last year. And he did what he wanted to do this day, got to the front end and was just able to hold off every challenge, but did earn this victory against softer competition than he's going to be encountering on Saturday in this stakes event. Came back in a race at Delta Downs last time, going the 5, and couldn't make the lead that day. And for this horse, that's a big problem when he can't get to the front end. We'll see if he can make the lead here, Craig, but even if he does, I think it could be a tall order to hold on.
Yes, even if he makes the lead, he's not going to do it easily. He's going to face some pressure. And if you just looked at that race 2 back in isolation, I guess you could make a case for him. But he was disappointing in that 5 furlong race. I mean, I don't want to underrate that race too much. There's some strong horses running at Delta Downs, and you got to be fast at 5 furlongs there. But the pace scenario just seems like he's really up against it here.
The number 9 is Hurricane J, and he's a horse who also needs to be forward to have his best chance. When you take a look at the 3 times he was victorious, he was vying for the early lead in all 3 of those races. So we'll see if he can get forward in this race. But even if he gets the right trick, Craig, I'm just not sure where the race in his past performances is that you can point to say this makes him the winner of this particular spot.
No, I mean, his highest speed figure that we see is a 111. I think the race rating for this race is a 118. That's a pretty big gap, and hard to look at those PPs and see that kind of jump.
And then all the way on the outside is the number 10, Dean Delivers, the horse that was shown first early on the pace projector. But as you can see, as we take a look at his last race, and then we'll take a look at his past performances, he's not a horse that necessarily needs the lead like he had this day to be most successful. And this was a really enterprising ride by Amicio Jaramillo in this race we're taking a look at Tampa, Craig, because it was a 7 furlong distance. They sent this horse hard to the front end. He carved out some very fast fractions and does all the dirty work and just barely gets nosed out in a heartbreaking photo finish at the end here. It looks like he's going to hold on right until that last head bob at the end. Even though he lost this race, I don't think there's any doubt that he ran the best race of anybody.
He did. I mean, you can see those bright red fractions, and not just the fractions. He was really challenged early by a horse, I think that was on his inside, if memory serves. But it was just an outright speed duel. He put that horse away and still was really game to the wire at a distance longer than this one. The turn back and the change in post should be right up his alley. I expect him to run very well.
Yeah, he has stalked and won in the past, and I think drawing outside definitely gives him the option to get that right kind of trip without taking kickback, just potentially tracking some of the speeds to his inside. And I just admire this horse's overall consistency. He's run plenty of speed figures that put him squarely in the mix in this race. He's been in the exact 13 of 19 lifetime starts. Even though he doesn't win all the time, he's almost always involved in the finish. And as we throw up our picks for this race, Craig, as you can see, I really respect that record for the number 10, Dean Delivers. I put him on top, just hoping he's a slightly better price than Candyman Rocket, but make no mistake, I do think Candyman Rocket is the most likely winner of this race and definitely the horse to beat.
At the end of the day, I think the 6 and the 10 are the 2 best horses in the field, and I don't really have any negatives on them. I sided with Candyman Rocket just because of the pace scenario. I think it just might get a little hot, even if Dean Delivers is able to rate off of that pace. But that said, I could see either one of these 2 taking it. It would just be a matter of price.
Yeah, I've got the number 3 long range Toddy in there somewhere, as do you. I'm sure we both flirted with putting this horse a little bit higher because he's been in good form lately, but just seems like there is a lot of strength between those top 2 picks that Craig and I just have reversed. So the number 6, Candyman Rocket for Craig, the number 10, Dean Delivers for me, and race 11 at Gulfstream Park on Saturday, the Gulfstream Park Sprint. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.